I drove 6 hours to surprise my family. But before I opened the door, I heard my sister laugh. "He's only good for paying our bills. Without him, we'd be screwed." My mom added softly, almost proudly, "Just smile at him and he'll pay anything." So I quietly walked back to my car and froze every payment, card, transfer, and login they relied on. By 9 a.m. the next morning, their phones exploded. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. By the time I finally turned off the highway and onto the old familiar exit, my eyes felt like sandpaper. 6 hours, 400 kilometers, 3 gas stations, 2 energy drinks, 1 completely stupid, hopeful idea. This time, they'll actually be happy to see me. The sky was already dark by then, that heavy, thick kind of darkness that made the streetlights look far away and weak. Rain had followed me for the last 2 hours of the drive, chasing me like a stubborn thought I couldn't shake. It only got worse the closer I got to my parents' neighborhood. Their street looked exactly the same as always. Narrow, lined with cars that never moved, old cracked sidewalks, porches with chipped paint. A place that never had much, but always demanded more. I pulled up in front of the house I grew up in and killed the engine. For a moment, I just sat there with my hands still on the steering wheel, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine and the steady hiss of rain on the windshield. The wipers left blurry arcs through the water as they moved back and forth, and in those brief, clear slices I could see the front of the house, the crooked railing on the porch that my dad always swore he'd fix next weekend, the sagging step with a crack down the middle, the little ceramic frog my mom bought from a flea market and still kept next to the door. The porch light was on. That stupid, simple detail made something warm move in my chest. They knew I was coming. Mom had texted 2 days ago. "If you want, you can come this weekend. Your sister needs to talk to you about wedding stuff. It would be nice if you visited. No, we miss you. No, we'd love to see you. Just, it would be useful if you came." But as always, I had filled in the missing warmth myself. In the back seat lay the evidence of that. A bakery box with a frosted cake I'd ordered on my lunch break. A gift bag with a new watch for Dad because his old one had broken. A framed photo of us from years ago that I'd finally printed for Mom, and an envelope with the hotel booking confirmation for my sister's honeymoon that I'd paid for 2 nights ago at 1:30 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I'd told myself I wanted to do it, that this was how I showed love, that this was my role as the oldest, the one with the good job, the one who made it out. I turned off the wipers. The rain continued to slide down the glass in rivers, distorting the porch light into a smear of gold. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A message from Mark, my coworker, and maybe the only person who truly knew how drained I'd been lately. "You get there safe? Don't let them talk you into anything crazy. Remember what we said." I stared at the message for a second. We had talked a lot the last few weeks. He'd seen me working late, watched me cancel plans because money is tight, heard me joke about funding 2 households. He'd stopped laughing at the jokes before I did. "You know this isn't normal, right?" he'd said one night at the office. "Every family helps each other," I'd replied. "Helping, yes. Carrying them like a backpack while they light cigarettes with your paychecks? No." Now, in the car outside my parents' house, I could almost hear his voice in the back of my head. Still, I typed back, "I'm here. It's fine. I'll call you later." It's fine. My favorite lie. I grabbed the cake first. The box was slightly warm against my hands. In bright blue icing, the baker had written, "Love you guys." At the time, it had felt sweet. Now, it suddenly felt naive. I balanced the cake against my hip, grabbed the bag with the gifts, tucked the envelope under my arm, and opened the car door. The rain hit me immediately, cold needles against my face, soaking my hair, darkening my jacket. I hunched my shoulders and jogged up the path to the porch, careful not to slip on the cracked step. The wooden boards creaked under my weight the way they always had. Behind the thin door, I could hear muffled music and voices. The living room window to the right was open a crack, probably to let in some air. Warm light spilled out through the curtains, a soft yellow rectangle on the slick, dark porch. I took a breath. The kind of breath you take when you're about to walk into an exam, or a job interview, or a room full of people who may or may not want you there. It'll be fine. They invited you. They need you. My hand raised toward the door. Just then, a burst of laughter floated through the cracked window. It was my sister's laugh. Unmistakable, sharp, and bright, and just a little bit mean. I'd known that laugh since we were kids. Usually it was aimed at other people. For some reason, hearing it now made my fingers curl tighter around the cake box. I paused. "And we'll be okay," As long as he keeps paying. My sister's voice drifted out, clear as if she were standing next to me. Seriously, without him we'd be completely screwed. Mortgage, the car, my wedding, everything. The words were so casual, tossed into the air like nothing. I didn't even process at first that he meant me. There was another laugh inside, overlapping with hers, my mother's, higher and thinner. "Don't say it like that," Mom said. She sounded like she had a glass in her hand. "You make us sound like villains. He'll pay, he always does. Just smile at him, ask about work, pretend you care. He's soft, has been since he was little. He'll sign anything if you make him feel needed." Another burst of laughter. This time, my fingers actually went numb. I stood there on the porch, rain dripping from my hair, listening to my family talk about me like I wasn't flesh and blood, just a bank account with legs. "Exactly," my sister said. I could picture her, hand waving in that dismissive way she had. "He's only good for paying our bills? What else would he do? It's not like he has his own family. He has us. We're his whole life." The sentence landed like a punch to the throat. He's only good for paying our bills. My name had never sounded so small. Inside, my father's voice spoke up, that slow, slightly tired rumble I'd grown up with. "You two are ruthless," he chuckled. "But she's right. Just don't push him too hard. You don't want him to suddenly realize how much we lean on him. We walk on this ice carefully. Remember the last time he tried to cut something back? He started asking questions." "Oh, please," my sister scoffed. "He felt bad for 2 minutes and then increased the transfer. Just play the long game, Dad." They laughed again. I stared at the door, at the stupid faded wreath Mom kept up all year, at the handle my small hand had grabbed 1,000 times growing up. My right hand began to shake. The cake box was getting heavier. My fingers readjusted out of habit, making sure I didn't drop it. Some distant, absurd part of my brain was still whispering, "Don't ruin the cake. It was expensive. They'll be disappointed. They'll be disappointed." I looked down at the box. Through a tiny gap in the cardboard, I could see a smear of blue frosting. "Love you guys." Something snapped. The box slipped. It wasn't dramatic. No slow motion, no explosion of color. It just left my hands and hit the wet porch with a dull, muffled thud. The lid bent, then tore. The side split open. White and blue frosting oozed onto the wood, rain turning it into a pale, sticky river. I stared at it. Inside, my sister was still talking. "After the wedding," she said, "I'm going to hint about a down payment on the new house. Not directly, you know. Just, we'll let him offer. And we have to be smart. He doesn't realize how much we count on him." Mom's voice again, soft and calculated. "Start with something small. Honeymoon upgrade, maybe. Extra nights. He likes feeling generous. It makes him easy to handle." Dad's tired chuckle. "Just don't let him think he's being used. If he ever really believed that, we'd be in trouble." The porch light buzzed faintly above me. My wet hair clung to my face. I took a step back. No knock, no ring of the doorbell, no dramatic outburst. Just one step, then another, and another. I left the cake on the porch, bleeding color into the dark wood. By the time I reached my car, the person who had gotten out of it 10 minutes earlier, the hopeful son, the eager brother, felt like someone else entirely. Someone naive. Someone I had outgrown in the space of 3 sentences. I opened the car door, climbed in, and closed it carefully, as if any sudden movement would break me. The rain drummed on the roof. My own reflection stared back at me from the black screen of my phone. Pale, wet, eyes wide. I didn't look like a son visiting his family. I looked like a man who had just walked in on something he'd always suspected but never seen. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just sat there with my fingers still curled around the steering wheel, breathing shallowly, listening to the soft tick-tick-tick of the cooling engine. My heartbeat felt louder than the rain. The house sat in front of me through the windshield, warm and glowing, a little bubble of light in the wet dark. The porch light was on, throwing a pale yellow circle over the cracked steps and the old railing my dad always promised to fix when things calmed down. Behind the curtains, I could see shadows moving, flashes of hands, the tilt of heads. From out here, it looked almost cozy. Anyone passing by would have thought, nice family night, maybe a small party, some drinks, maybe a board game. A normal house on a normal rainy evening. No one would have guessed that 10 minutes earlier I had stood on that same porch and listened to my family discuss me like a line in their budget. I swallowed, my throat tight, and finally reached for my phone. My hands, weirdly, felt steady now. Not numb, not shaking wildly, just steady, like my body had decided it was done with panic and had moved into some colder, clearer mode. I unlocked the screen. On the home screen, second row, there was a folder I'd named Family. The little blue folder icon stared back at me like a joke I was only now understanding. At the time I'd made it, it had felt sweet, sentimental even. I'd liked the idea that my family had their own place on my phone. I'd told myself it was practical too, all the apps connected to them in one spot so I could find them quickly when someone needed help in a hurry, because there was always a hurry. Inside that folder, banking app, credit card app, loan app, digital wallet, payment platform, all stacked neatly in a little square labeled family. I stared at that word, family. It used to make me think of holidays and dinners and old photos. Tonight, sitting there with my hair still damp from the rain and their words still echoing in my head, it felt different, heavier, dirtier, like a label someone had pasted over something totally different, financial services. I tapped the banking app. It opened with its usual polite blue logo, the little spinning circle, then the familiar layout appeared. Balance at the top, accounts underneath, everything clean and professional like nothing was wrong in the world. That balance number had always been both a comfort and a threat, proof that I was doing well enough to support everyone, and a reminder that one big emergency, one bad month, could wipe me out. Tonight, it felt like a witness, like it had seen every time I'd quietly chosen them over myself. I took a slow breath and navigated to scheduled and recurring payments. The list loaded slowly, line by line, as if the app itself was ashamed. Mortgage, parents' address, 1450, Sonchauer month, auto pay, linked to my checking rent, sister's address, no 200, month, auto transfer, from my account utilities, parents' address, average 380 or a month, auto debit auto insurance, brother's car, 190, dinar month, auto pay medical payment plan, dad, 260, month, auto pay personal loan, mom, 300, month, auto pay, family account transfer, 400 month. Recurring all of it quietly, obediently siphoning out of my life every month without fail. Below that, when I scrolled, came the long history of one-time emergency transfers. It felt like reading an old diary, except instead of feelings, it was just money going out. $80. Groceries short this week. $120. Unexpected fee, can you cover? $200. Emergency dentist will pay you back. $450. Car repair, we'll split it. $900. Venue deposit just until we get the refund. I remembered almost every one. The $80 when Mom sent a picture of an almost empty fridge and wrote, "We'll manage, but it's tight." The $450 when Dad's car wouldn't start and he said, "If I can't drive, I can't get to work, and then we're all finished." The $900 when my sister called crying about losing her dream venue, and I'd been so tired from work that saying yes felt easier than saying no. I scrolled further back. 4 years. 5. 6. The numbers blurred together, but the pattern didn't. Months when I'd paid more to my parents' house than for my own rent. Months when my bank balance looked like a heart monitor, spike on payday, flatline a week later. Months when I'd gone without buying myself basic things, decent shoes, a doctor's visit I needed, a trip to see friends, because this month is tight for Mom and Dad. I saw dates that lined up with memories. The time I told my coworkers I couldn't join their weekend trip because I was saving for something, when in reality I just covered 3 different bills at home. The time I'd put off my own car repair for 3 months because my sister needed just a little help with rent. The time I'd said no to a professional course that could have boosted my career because there wasn't room in the budget. I did have a plan once. I'd pay off my student loans, build a savings cushion, maybe buy a small place of my own instead of renting forever. Maybe, just once, travel somewhere that wasn't my childhood home. That plan now lay buried under years of, "We're just struggling this month, and you're the only one we can count on." Layers upon layers of temporary help that somehow never ended. My throat tightened. I thought about the conversation inside the house. Their voices replayed in my mind like a bad recording. "He's only good for paying our bills. Just smile, pretend you care, he'll sign anything. He won't say no to his mother." Words spoken so casually, without hesitation, like they were just stating facts, not stabbing me through the chest. Then another memory surfaced. My mom last Christmas, laughing with a glass of cheap champagne in her hand, telling a friend, "We're lucky. Most parents have to rely on pensions. We have our son." Everyone had laughed. I'd laughed too back then. It had felt like a compliment. Tonight it sounded like a confession, like I was an unlimited pension fund, not a person. The rain made soft streaks on the windshield, turning the world into watery lines. The porch light blurred into a hazy circle, glowing and innocent, completely unaware. On the screen, one of the recurring payments had a little green icon next to it. Active. The mortgage. I clicked it. A small submenu slid up from the bottom. Pause, edit, cancel. I stared at those 3 words for what felt like a full minute. My thumb hovered over cancel. My chest felt too tight. My skin felt hot. My thumb trembled slightly, not from pure fear, but from the sheer weight of what I was about to do. It wasn't just a button, it was a line in the sand. Because I knew, the moment I touched that button, there would be no going back to the old version of me. The version that swallowed resentment, smiled on command, and paid without question. My brain, desperate, threw one last argument at me, loud and frantic. What if they really can't manage without you? What if Dad's health gets worse? What if they actually lose the house? What if they fall apart and it's your fault? What if they call you sobbing tomorrow and you have to hear it knowing you caused it? My chest clenched at the thought. Images flashed across my mind. My father coughing in bed, my mother sitting at a table covered in bills, my sister packing boxes in tears. Behind that wave of guilt and fear, quieter but sharper, came another thought. A voice that didn't sound like panic, or my parents, or my therapist. It sounded like me. What if they never even tried to manage because you always fixed everything before it hurt them? I sat with that for a second. I thought of every guilt trip I'd swallowed as truth. Do you want us to live on the street? After all we did for you? We didn't raise you to be selfish. You're the only one we can count on. Not, can we figure something out together? Not, what can you realistically do? Just raw, weaponized guilt. I thought of Mark at work, leaning against my cubicle wall 2 weeks ago, while I stared at yet another urgent transfer request with a knot in my stomach. Just imagine, he'd said quietly, what your life would look like if you weren't covering their messes all the time. At the time, I'd laughed it off. I can't even picture that, I'd told him. Now, sitting in my car outside that house with the rain and the porch light and their voices echoing in my head, I realized something terrifying and crystal clear. I could picture it. And once I'd seen that image, a life where my money, my time, my energy were mine, I couldn't unsee it. I exhaled once, long and slow. Then I hit cancel. A little pop-up appeared, polite as ever. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? My thumb hovered over yes. My heart slammed against my ribs like it wanted to escape. This is it, I thought. This is the moment where my life splits in two, before and after. Yes. Confirm. The mortgage payment disappeared from the active list. Just like that. One line gone, one chain cut. I stared at the screen, feeling like I'd just pushed a heavy piece of furniture off my chest. I was still lying under it, but suddenly I could breathe. I moved down the list. Sister's rent, cancel. Parents' utilities, cancel. Brother's auto insurance, cancel. Dad's medical plan, cancel. Mom's loan payment, cancel. Family account monthly transfer, cancel. Each time the same small, fake-friendly question. Are you sure you want to cancel? Each time I hit yes, faster than the last, like my thumb was catching up to a decision my mind had already made. By the time I was done, the list of active recurring payments was almost empty. Just my own rent, my own phone bill, my own things. For the first time since I'd started working, the majority of my outgoing money wasn't committed to someone else before I even earned it. It was mine. The realization felt almost dizzying, like standing up too fast. I didn't stop there. I swiped back to the home screen and opened the credit card app. The one with the supplemental card my sister used for emergencies. The one that had somehow been used for a lot of non-emergencies too. Her card was listed under mine, supplementary card, sister's name, credit limit, $5,000 balance, $4,987.62, last transactions, wedding dress deposit, decorator payment, spa, salon, restaurant. I stared at the transactions. I remembered when she'd called it just a small backup, just in case something comes up for the wedding. There was nothing small about any of those numbers. My thumb slid to the security section. There it was. Freeze card. The button I'd never touched. The one I'd always avoided because she needs it. I pressed it. Are you sure? The cardholder will no longer be able to make new transactions. Yes. The status changed. Status? Card frozen. It felt like snapping a credit line and a leash at the same time. Next, I opened the payment app I used for quick transfers. The saved recipients list looked less like a helpful feature and more like a map of my own exhaustion. Mom, dad, sister, brother, family account. Cousin, I deleted them one by one. Tap, delete, confirm. Mom, gone. Dad, gone. Sister, gone. Brother, gone. Family account, gone. Cousin, gone. Each name disappearing felt like cutting another invisible rope. My phone buzzed as the automated systems did their job in the background. You have changed your recurring payments. You have frozen a card. You have removed saved beneficiaries. Confirmation emails started appearing in my inbox with timestamps, reference numbers, security alerts. Good, I thought. Let there be a record. Let there be no confusion later. Before I put the phone down, I swiped once more and opened the voice recorder app. The red circle sat there at the bottom of the screen, simple and inviting. My finger hovered over it. I looked back at the house again, at the slightly open living room window where the laughter had slipped out. I could still see shapes moving inside, glasses in hands, my mother gesturing, my sister leaning forward, my father leaning back like a king holding court. I didn't want to gaslight myself later. I didn't want to wonder if I'd misheard or exaggerated. I wanted their words, exactly as they said them. I tapped record. The timer started. I slipped the phone into my jacket pocket, feeling its weight against my chest like a promise. Then I stepped out of the car. Rain soaked me instantly. It had softened to more of a steady drizzle, but my hair was already damp from earlier, and now cold water slid down the back of my neck and into my collar. My jeans clung to my legs. My shoes squelched slightly in the wet gravel. I walked quietly back toward the side of the house, avoiding the porch this time. I stayed in the darker strip of shadow near the shrubs where the porch light didn't quite reach. The damp leaves brushed my jacket, leaving little droplets on the sleeves. The ground there was softer, grassy, a little muddy. My shoes slipped a bit when I stepped, and I had to shift my weight carefully so I wouldn't fall. Up close, I could see through the narrow gap between the curtains and the windowsill. The living room was full. My parents sat on the couch, Mom cross-legged with a blanket over her knees, Dad leaning back, one ankle resting on the opposite knee like he owned the room. My sister perched on the armrest, scrolling her phone with one hand and cradling a wine glass with the other. My brother leaned against the far wall, half paying attention, half glued to his screen. My cousin had claimed the recliner, one leg hanging over the side. There was a small table in the center with snacks, a bowl of chips, some half-eaten crackers, a tub of supermarket dip, a plate with something that looked like leftover pizza. A half-empty bottle of cheap wine stood there, condensation starting to gather on the glass. Someone had put music on low in the background, indistinguishable pop beats muffled by walls and rain. My family, my dependents, the people I'd been breaking myself to keep upright. I adjusted my stance, keeping my body still and my face in shadow. I could feel the phone pressing against my ribs through my jacket. The red rec icon, now hidden, kept counting seconds. I stood perfectly still. He's coming tonight, right? My brother asked, glancing at his phone. His voice had that bored tone, like he was talking about a delivery arriving, not a person. You texted him? My sister rolled her eyes dramatically. I didn't even need sound to recognize the movement. I'd grown up with it. Yes, he said he's on his way, she replied, taking a sip of wine. Relax, he'll be here. We need to make a list of what to ask for first. She said ask like it meant extract. Mom snorted. Not ask, she corrected, waving her hand. Suggest. Let him think he came up with it. Remember how we got him to take over the whole mortgage? They all laughed like it was a funny story from a party. My dad chuckled, pride in his voice. We just said we were struggling with the timing and that the bank made a mistake, he said. He insisted on fixing it. That's what he's there for. He's the responsible one. That's what he's there for. Not, that's who he is. Not, that's our son. Just a role, a function, a tool. My cousin, who'd recently gotten a little help with his car payment from me, chuckled too, leaning back further in the recliner. Man, I wish I had a brother like that, he said. I'd never worry. Don't be stupid, my sister shot back, smirking. You would just abuse it. You have to be smart, slow. You don't push someone like him too hard. You just keep him feeling like the hero. He loves that. Keep him feeling like the hero. Like I was some emotionally unstable sponsor they had to manage. My brother shrugged. As long as you don't piss him off, he said. Remember when he said he was thinking about cutting some stuff? Mom almost had a heart attack. They all laughed again, and my mother made a face, putting her hand to her chest in an exaggerated gesture. That's because he started talking to that therapist, she said, like the word tasted bitter. I knew it was a bad idea. They fill your head with nonsense. Boundaries and self-care and all that. Ever since then, he's been different. Her voice turned mocking on the word boundaries, like it was a joke, not something I was using to stay sane. "Not different enough," my sister muttered, topping up her wine. "He still pays?" They all laughed again. The sound hit me harder than the rain. My hand curled into a fist inside my jacket pocket, knuckles pressing against the cold metal of my keys and the warm plastic of my phone. The recorder kept running, quietly saving every word while my heart pounded in my ears. I stood there in the rain, feeling my entire childhood rearranging itself in my head. Little moments began to click into place like a grim puzzle. Comments I'd ignored because I didn't want to cause trouble, tones I'd explained away as just stress, jokes about my job and my salary that suddenly didn't feel like jokes at all. I remembered being 16 and hearing my dad tell someone, "He's the responsible one. He'll look after us when we're old." I remembered my mom telling me at 20, "You're our safety net, you know that?" And then laughing, as if it were cute. I remembered my sister at 24, half drunk at a New Year's party, saying, "You're basically my walking savings account." Then hugging me and saying she was kidding. I'd felt proud, useful, wanted. Now, standing in the drizzle with my jacket slowly getting heavier, I realized I'd been groomed for years to step into this exact role. Not son, not brother, provider. I stepped back slowly, away from the window, careful not to make the shrubs rustle too loudly. The wet leaves brushed my shoulder. My shoes slid a little on the slick grass, and I had to catch myself on the side of the house. No one inside noticed. They were too busy planning how to suggest new ways to use me. I walked around the house without making a sound, keeping to the shadows, the recorder still running until I reached the car again. When I got back behind the wheel, I pulled the phone out of my pocket and stopped the recording. The time counter stared up at me. A few minutes of audio that contained years of proof. I saved the file and titled it something simple so I'd recognize it later. Just one word. Porch. Then I slid the phone onto the passenger seat, wiped my wet hand on my jeans, and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. I pulled away from the curb. Not toward home, not toward work, not toward the motel yet. I just drove. Past the corner store where I'd bought milk as a kid and counted coins carefully in front of the bored cashier. Past the park where my dad used to sit on a bench and tell me, "You're the man of the house. You have to look after everyone." Long before I understood what that meant. Past the school where I'd walked my sister on rainy days so she wouldn't ruin her shoes, while she complained about how slow I was. The streets blurred past, gray and wet and familiar. The wipers squeaked back and forth, like an anxious habit. The rain turned from heavy to light, then back to heavy again, like the sky couldn't decide what it wanted to do. The streetlights cast long reflections on the pavement, turning every puddle into a warped mirror. My phone buzzed once on the passenger seat, then twice, then 3 times in a row. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I kept my eyes on the road and my hands on the wheel. I drove until the familiar houses and shops and cracked sidewalks fell away, and the road opened into that empty stretch of highway that always felt like an exit from my old life, even when I'd eventually turned back. Tonight, I didn't turn back. Only when my eyes started to sting and my shoulders ached did I pull into the parking lot of a cheap motel I'd passed 1,000 times but never stopped at. The neon sign flickered over the office window, the letters buzzing. Rooms available. Weekly rates. One of the letters was out, so it read more like R.O. Mess Ava Label. Somehow that felt appropriate. If someone had looked out the office window at that moment, they would have seen a wet, tired man get out of his car like someone 50 instead of 30, jacket dark with rain, shoulders slightly hunched. They would have watched him walk into the office, slide his ID across the counter with fingers that still smelled faintly of frosting, and say in a low, flat voice, "One night." The guy at the desk barely looked up from whatever he was watching on his phone. He glanced at my ID, tapped something into a computer, and handed me a key card in a cardboard sleeve. No questions, no small talk, just a transaction. For once, I was grateful not to be known. I walked down the outdoor corridor, the concrete damp under my shoes, the air smelling like wet asphalt, old cigarettes, and cheap detergent. Doors lined both sides, some with light under them, some completely dark. A TV laughed from one of the rooms. From another, I heard muffled arguing. When I found my room, I slid the key card, waited for the small green light, and pushed the door open. Inside, everything was beige. Beige curtains, beige bedspread, beige walls trying very hard to be cheerful. A small table, 2 chairs, a TV bolted to the wall, a bathroom door slightly ajar. I shut the door behind me and leaned my forehead against it. The silence in that room was different from the silence in my apartment. My apartment's silence always felt temporary, like a pause between obligations. A layover. a place I stayed just long enough to recharge before the next call, the next emergency, the next, "Can you help us with one more thing?" This room felt empty, neutral, no history, no expectations, like a blank page nobody else had written on. I sat on the edge of the bed without taking off my wet jacket, the springs creaking slightly under my weight, and pulled out my phone again. I opened the banking app. Again, I checked every account, every card, every recurring payment, every saved recipient. Mortgage, canceled. Rent, canceled. Utilities, canceled. Insurance, canceled. Loans, canceled. Family transfers, canceled. Supplementary card, frozen. Saved beneficiaries, removed. It was done. For the first time in my adult life, my money wasn't already spoken for before it even arrived in my account. It wasn't lined up in neat little rows, ready to march out of my life the second it came in. Fear rose up again, sharp and hot, sitting heavy in my chest. What have you done? What if they call you tomorrow crying? What if your dad is in the hospital and they can't afford his meds? What if your mom collapses from stress? What if your sister shows up at your door with bags in her hands and nowhere to go? What if something really bad happens and everyone points at you and says, "This is your fault"? The question spiraled, fast and loud. I lay back on the bed, still in my jeans and shoes, and stared at the ceiling. There was a little water stain above the light fixture, shaped like a continent on a map. I watched it and forced myself to breathe slowly. If any of that happened, I realized I knew exactly what I would say. Not because I wanted to be cruel, not because I didn't care, but because if I didn't say it, I would never stop drowning. Call the bank, call the doctor, call the vendor, call the landlord, call each other, call anyone you want, but don't call me for money. I whispered it once into the empty room, just to hear how it sounded. Don't call me for money. The words felt strange in my mouth, like trying on clothes that weren't mine yet, but they fit better than I expected. At some point, exhausted from the drive, the confrontation in my head, and the constant war between guilt and relief, I drifted off to sleep. The phone was still in my hand when my eyes finally closed. Screen dark, battery warm. Their messages waiting on the other side of the lock screen like a storm I'd decided, at least for one night, not to walk into. The motel room phone didn't have a clock, so when I woke up, I had no idea what time it was at first. Then I heard a vibration near my ear. My own phone was buzzing, trying to slide off the nightstand. I squinted against the light coming through the blinds and grabbed it, blinking at the screen. 7:14 a.m. Mom. Incoming call. I watched it ring. I didn't swipe. It went to missed calls. Immediately, it started again. 7:16 a.m. Mom. Incoming call, then 7:18, 7:21, 7:23. Dad. Incoming call, 7:24. Sister. Incoming call. My heart sped up, but not with panic, with a strange kind of cold anticipation. They had noticed. I let all of them ring out. Eventually, the calls stopped long enough for the first text to come in. Mom. Something is wrong with the bank. My card was declined at the store. It said, "Payment failed. Did your salary not go in? What's happening?" Dad. The bank called. Mortgage payment didn't go through. They said it was canceled. Did you do something? Sister. My card just got declined at the salon in front of everyone. The bank app says, "Card frozen." Fix it now. This is humiliating. I sat up slowly, the cheap mattress dipping under me. A part of me wanted to laugh. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, rested my elbows on my knees, and read every message, one by one, the way you read a report you've been expecting. Mom again, a few minutes later. They just called about the electricity. They say we're behind on payments. That's impossible. You pay it automatically. Did you forget to click something? You need to call them today, Dad. Your mother is panicking. This is not a joke. We rely on you for these things. Sister. I have an appointment with the decorator at 10. The last payment bounced. If we don't pay today, she's canceling our date. Do you understand what that means? All because you pushed some button? The phone buzzed nonstop, a steady, angry bee in my hand. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and left the phone on the sink. The hot water stung my skin, and with it came a wave of old instinct. They need you. They're in trouble. Fix it. Call the bank. Call the provider. Smooth things over. Take responsibility. I pressed my palms against the tiles and let the water fall over my head. Last night's words replayed. He's only good for paying our bills. Just keep him happy. We need the money for the wedding, the mortgage, everything. He's soft. He'll sign anything. By the time I stepped out of the shower, the buzzing had turned my phone into a small, angry animal. I wiped my hands on a thin motel towel and picked it up. 42 missed calls, 9 new voicemails, 19 unread texts. A fresh one popped up as I watched. Mom, you can't do this to family. There it was. Not, are you okay? Not, what happened? Not, we're worried. Just, you can't stop doing this thing for us. That's not allowed. I sat back down on the bed, the towel around my shoulders, the phone in my hands, and felt something loosen, like a knot that had been pulled tight for years suddenly giving way. For the first time, I let myself smile. It wasn't a nice smile. It was sharp, tired, a little bitter, but it was mine. I typed back one message. I'll be there at noon. Mom responded in seconds. Good. We'll talk about this like adults. Don't do anything else stupid. Dad, you better have a good explanation. Sister, you need to fix this. Today. I put the phone down. There was nothing left to fix. When I pulled up to the house again, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy and gray. There were more cars this time. My cousin's truck, my brother's beat-up sedan. Apparently my meltdown had become a family event. I parked on the street again instead of in the driveway. A small thing, but I didn't want to feel like I belonged on that concrete. The moment I got out, the front door opened. My sister stormed onto the porch like a storm in a bathrobe, hair half curled, one eye done, robe tied wrong, bare feet slapping the wood. She looked more offended than scared. What is wrong with you? She demanded before I even reached the steps. Do you have any idea how insane this is? My card was declined in front of everyone. They had to stop in the middle of doing my hair. Do you know how embarrassing that was? I stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked at her. Hi, I said. Good to see you too. Behind her, my mother appeared, her hair done, lipstick on, but her eyes weren't soft. They were hard and sharp, her phone clutched in one hand like she might throw it. Cut the sarcasm, she snapped. We need to talk. Inside. Now. My father followed, slower, arms already folded across his chest, mouth set in a familiar, disapproving line. My brother hovered in the doorway, phone in his hand, pretending not to stare. For years, that posture, Dad in the doorway, Mom in front, sister flanking, had been enough to make me shrink a little, even as an adult. Today, I stayed where I was. Here is fine, I said. My mother blinked, as if the script in her head didn't match what I'd just said. Excuse me? Here is fine, I repeated. Say what you need to say. My father huffed. Don't be ridiculous. We're not airing family business in the street. Seems like you were comfortable doing it with the window open last night, I said quietly. They all froze. A flicker of something, confusion, suspicion, crossed my sister's face. What does that mean? She asked. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and unlocked it. When I got here last night, I said, I was about to knock. Then I heard my name. Then I heard things like, he's only good for paying our bills. So I did something I've never done before. I tapped the voice memo icon and hit play. My sister's voice came out of the tiny speaker, slightly distorted but clear enough. As long as he keeps paying, we're fine. Seriously, without him we'd be completely screwed. Mortgage, the car, my wedding, everything. My mother's voice followed, almost overlapping. Don't say it like that. You make us sound like villains. He'll pay. He always does. Just smile at him, ask about work, pretend you care. He's soft, has been since he was little. He'll sign anything. Then my father's chuckle. You two are ruthless, but she's right. Just don't push him too hard. You don't want him to suddenly realize how much we lean on him. Remember the last time he tried to cut something back? He started asking questions. Silence fell on the porch. Hearing it through the phone, with them standing right in front of me, made it even worse. They couldn't pretend I'd misunderstood or twisted their words. It was all there, in their own voices. My sister's face went pale. My mother's mouth pressed into a thin line. My father's eyes narrowed. Where did you get that? My mother hissed. Were you spying on us? Standing outside like some kind of creep? You left the window open, I said calmly. I heard you. I recorded it. That is such a violation of privacy, my father barked. You had no right to do that. A laugh escaped me. It surprised all of us, including me. I had no right, I said slowly. I had no right to hear what you really think of me. I had no right to listen while you discussed me like a walking ATM. That's interesting. We were venting, my mother said quickly, switching to the wounded tone I knew too well. We were stressed. You know our situation? No, I cut in. You weren't venting. You were strategizing. About how to keep me paying, about how to keep me from realizing how much you depend on my money. You weren't talking about me as your son. You were talking about me as a resource. That's not fair, my sister snapped, color returning to her cheeks in a flush of anger. You know we love you. We've always appreciated everything you do for us. Appreciated it so much that you reduced me to only good for paying our bills? I asked. Appreciated it so much that your main concern was keeping me happy enough to keep the money flowing? She shifted, crossing her arms. It was a joke. You're taking it way too seriously. It didn't sound like a joke, I said. There was no laughter when you started listing everything I pay for. There was no joke in your voice when you talked about letting me think it was my idea to take on more debt. That sounded like a plan. My father stepped forward, his voice gaining that edge he used when he wanted to control the conversation. Enough, he said. You turned off the payments. Fine. You had your little tantrum. Congratulations. You scared your mother half to death. You sabotaged your sister's appointments. You caused chaos. Now you've made your point. Turn them back on. We'll talk about boundaries going forward. I didn't have a tantrum, I said. I made a decision. Well, it was a selfish decision, my mother shot back. We're your family. We raised you. We sacrificed so much so you could get where you are. You owe us. There it was, the word that had been floating under every interaction. Owe. How exactly do I owe you? I asked. By paying your mortgage for 6 years? By covering my sister's rent while she posted pictures from weekends away? By paying for my brother's car insurance while he saved for a new gaming setup? By taking on your loan payments without asking any questions because you said, we're drowning? How much more do I owe you? My sister rolled her eyes. Oh my God, nobody forced you. You offered. You were the one who said, I'll help. Offered? I repeated. Did you ever really give me a choice? She opened her mouth, but I kept talking. Every conversation was the same, I said. You'd call in a panic. We don't know what to do. We'll lose the house. We'll be homeless. You'd cry, Mom. You'd talk about Dad's health. You'd say things like, you don't want us living on the street, do you? You don't want your mother sick, do you? And when I hesitated, even for a second, you'd say, after all we did for you. How exactly is that a choice? My mother's eyes filled with tears. So you think we were manipulating you? Is that what your therapist told you? My therapist told me, I said steadily, that love doesn't come with a bill attached, that guilt isn't a form of gratitude, that what you've been doing for years has a name, financial abuse. My father scoffed. Oh, please. Now you're a victim. You with your good job, your fancy apartment, your expensive gadgets. You've always had more than the rest of us. All we asked was that you share. You didn't ask, I said. You demanded. You assumed. You planned your lives around my salary without ever asking if I could handle it. My sister jumped in again. We're not exactly living in luxury here, she said, gesturing at the house. We're just trying to survive. You can help. It's not like you have your own family to worry about. Don't be dramatic. And here we are again, I said. Because I'm single, I'm automatically the designated provider. Because I don't have kids, you decided my money belongs to your house, your wedding, your emergencies. That's what family does, Dad said firmly. They support each other. No, I replied. What family does is share responsibility. What we've been doing is me supporting all of you while you call me soft behind my back. Silence. From the doorway, my brother shifted guiltily. He looked down at his shoes. I wondered how many times he'd heard this kind of conversation before and said nothing. Mom tried one more angle. Her voice softened, her hand pressing against her chest as if she were physically hurting. You can't punish us like this, she said. We can't just suddenly pick up all these payments. Your father can't work more hours. My health isn't what it used to be. Your sister's wedding is right around the corner. We have commitments. We can't undo them. That's the thing, I said. You could have thought about that before signing contracts you couldn't afford, before taking loans in your name that you assumed I'd pay, before planning a wedding based on my salary instead of your own. My sister's eyes flashed. So what? You want me to have some cheap little backyard ceremony? Are you serious? I've been dreaming about this my whole life. And you decided, I said, that your dream was more important than my future, than my sanity, than my chance to maybe have something of my own one day. We're your family, Mom repeated, almost helplessly, like she thought the word itself should be enough. You don't turn your back on family. I reached into my bag and pulled out the 3 folded papers I'd printed that morning at a copy center on my way here. I'm not turning my back, I said. I'm facing reality. I handed one to my mother, one to my father, one to my sister. They looked down at the papers, then back at me. "What is this?" my dad asked. "Read it," I said. They opened them. My mother's lips moved as she read the words. "Effective immediately, I am no longer financially responsible for any of you. Any debt, bill, or financial obligation taken in your name is your responsibility. I will not be making payments, signing as guarantor, or adding my accounts or cards to any of your obligations. This decision is final and non-negotiable." My sister crumpled hers halfway through. "You can't be serious," she sputtered. "You can't just quit like this. What about my deposits? The decorator, the venue, the honeymoon? We already told everyone the date." "What about them?" I asked. "Call the venue, call the decorator. Explain that you overcommitted. Ask if they can reschedule, downsize, change plans, take on another job, start being creative with your own money instead of mine." "You're ruining my life," she whispered, voice thick with outrage. "No," I said calmly. "I'm letting you live your life based on your own means." My father crumpled his paper as well, his face red. "You are being cruel," he said. "You'll regret this. One day, when we're gone, you'll think back on this moment and wish you'd been more generous." I met his eyes and, for the first time, didn't look away. "No," I said quietly. "I regret not doing this sooner." My mother stepped closer, tears finally spilling over. "We brought you into this world," she said. "We fed you, clothed you, paid for your school trips when we had nothing. We sacrificed. Isn't that worth anything?" "It is," I said. "And I've been paying that debt for years, with interest. But at some point, what you call gratitude turned into obligation. You made me feel like I had no right to my own money, my own time, my own dreams. You made me believe that the only way I deserved love was by paying for it." "That is not true," she insisted. "Then why?" I asked. "Was your first reaction to the payments stopping not, 'Are you okay?' but 'Fix it, and you can't do this to family'?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Behind them, my cousin whispered something to my brother. My brother looked away, ashamed. I took a step back down the path. "This isn't a negotiation," I said. "I didn't come here to argue or to be convinced. I came to tell you where my line is." My sister reached out suddenly and grabbed my arm. "You're really going to leave us like this?" she demanded. "Just like that? You're going to watch us drown?" I looked at her hand on my sleeve, her perfectly manicured nails, the engagement ring that cost more than the car I drove in university, the robe she'd thrown on over what looked like not cheap clothes. "You're not drowning," I said. "You're being asked to swim on your own for the first time in a long time." She tightened her grip. "You won't do it," she said, voice shaking. "You say all this now, but when the bank calls again, you'll cave. You always do. That's who you are." I met her eyes. "Watch me," I said softly. I pulled my arm free and turned away. Behind me, the shouting started. "Selfish. Ungrateful. You're not my son anymore if you walk away. Remember this when you're old and alone." The words hit my back like stones. I kept walking. At the car, I opened the door and glanced back once. My parents were still on the porch, my mother crying, my father fuming. My sister was staring at the paper in her hand like it was a death sentence. My brother and cousin hovered behind them, stuck between loyalty and fear and something like dawning awareness. For a second, my chest ached. Then I remembered their voices last night, light and relaxed as they discussed how to manage me, as if I were a broken machine that needed careful handling. I got in the car and closed the door. Silence. I started the engine and drove away. This time I didn't look in the rearview mirror. People think big life changes happen in one explosion. Sometimes they do. But more often, they happen in a series of small, quiet decisions that pile up until one day you realize you're standing in a different life. The weeks after that confrontation were not easy. My family didn't disappear from my phone. If anything, they intensified at first. Angry messages, voicemails full of yelling, long paragraphs about how I was destroying them. Then, when that didn't work, came the guilt. "Mom, I don't sleep at night. My heart hurts. I can't believe my own child would do this to me." "Dad, men provide for their families. That's what real men do. You've become weak." "Sister, I had to cancel the decorator. Are you happy? I had to call and say we can't afford it. Do you know how humiliating that was?" Every word aimed at the soft part of me that had spent years contorting itself to keep them comfortable. I didn't block them. I didn't want to pretend they didn't exist. That felt too much like denial in the opposite direction. Instead, I changed my rules. I would only respond to messages that weren't about money, and even then, only when I felt calm. Everything else, I read. Then I archived. My therapist called it witnessing without participating. At work, Mark noticed the difference first. "You look lighter," he said one afternoon, leaning on the partition of my cubicle. "Did your family suddenly win the lottery or something?" I laughed. For once, it wasn't bitter. "Not exactly," I said, but I stopped acting like they already had. He blinked, then grinned slowly. "You did it." "Yeah," I said. "I did." "How bad is the fallout?" "Bad," I admitted. "But for once, it's not happening inside my bank account." He nodded, serious again. "I know it sucks, but I'm proud of you, man. That took guts." There were still moments when it didn't feel brave at all. Nights when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, hearing my father's words echo in my skull. "You'll regret this when we're gone." Afternoons when a message from Mom popped up with just, "Doctor says I need more tests," and my chest tightened with the urge to send money, to fix, to rescue. Each time I reminded myself her health is her responsibility. His bills are his responsibility. Their mortgage is their responsibility. My life is mine. Little by little, something strange started to happen. My own life grew. I had more money left after rent. Not a lot, but more than the scraps I was used to. I started putting a real amount into savings every month. At first, it felt wrong, like hoarding. Then it began to feel like building something. I paid off one of my smaller debts earlier than scheduled. I finally replaced my old worn-out shoes with something that didn't hurt my feet. I got my car serviced on time instead of putting it off until the engine made weird noises. I said yes when coworkers invited me for coffee. I joined a weekend hiking group. I spent money, my own money, on small, simple pleasures without doing silent math in my head about who needed help more. For the first time since university, I could actually imagine a future that included something other than supporting everyone. After a few months, the tone of the messages from home began to shift. The anger cooled. The guilt softened into something more like resignation. "Mom, we sold the big TV. Your father complained, but it was useless anyway. Dad, took some odd jobs, back hurts, but we're managing. Sister, found a cheaper venue, smaller but cozy. It was like watching a family learn to walk again after years of being carried." One evening, my sister sent a longer message. "I got a part-time job at a cafe. It's not much, but it covers my rent now. I hate it, but it's kind of satisfying paying something myself. Don't let that go to your head." I smiled at that. I replied, "It won't, but I am glad for you." Months later, another message arrived. "We moved, smaller house, cheaper town. Not what Mom wanted, but it's what they can afford now. Dad grumbles, but I think he sleeps better." Then, one Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a photo. My sister in a simple white dress. The man I'd met once standing beside her. A courthouse backdrop behind them. No arches, no chandeliers, no $1,000 centerpieces, no expensive venue with a 6-digit bill I was expected to cover. Just them. The caption, "I got married today. Thought you should know." I stared at the photo for a long time. I thought of the version of this day my family had planned. Massive feast, expensive location, endless guests, all underwritten by my generosity. This looked smaller, but somehow more real. I typed back, "Congratulations. I hope it's the life you actually want, not the one everyone else expected." There was a pause. Then, "It's not the wedding I imagined when we were talking, but it's the one we could afford without begging. I'm angry at you for how everything went down, and at the same time, I can see why you did it. Don't let that go to your head either." I laughed. Maybe this was what real change looked like. Messy, uneven, with no clean apology, no dramatic, "we were wrong." Just small acknowledgments, half angry, half honest. Around the 1-year mark, my mother sent a message that made me stop in my tracks. "Your father and I went to a financial advisor. He said we made a mistake relying on you so much. I didn't like hearing it, but I needed to. We're trying to do better. No sorry, no we hurt you. Just that." It wasn't what the younger version of me wanted, but the current version of me, the one who was slowly learning that I didn't need their approval to exist, decided it was enough. One evening, I sat alone in my living room in my new city, a place I'd moved to after finally being able to choose a location based on my dreams and job, not distance from my parents' house. The apartment was still modest. Second floor, slightly crooked floorboards, tiny balcony that overlooked a tree instead of a dumpster, but everything in it was mine. The couch, the lamp, the coffee table, the rug I'd picked because I liked it, not because it was cheap enough that it wouldn't hurt if family needed help that month. I opened my banking app out of habit and checked my numbers. For once, the site didn't fill me with dread or guilt. Money came in, money went out. For my rent, my groceries, my life. My savings grew slowly, each month adding a little more to a future that finally, belatedly, belonged to me. In the notifications tab, old messages from that terrible morning a year ago sat in a cluster. Why are the cards declined? The bank says payment stopped. The power company called, you can't do this to family. I tapped select all. The app asked me, archive, delete? I chose archive. I didn't want to erase the past. I wanted to remember why I'd changed. My phone buzzed once more with a new message just then. Mom, hope you're doing well. It's strange not having you here all the time. I still don't agree with how you did things. But we're okay. I hope you are too. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed, I am. For the first time in a long time, I am. I hope you really are too. I hit send. Then I went to my email and opened a message I'd been ignoring for a few days. A promo from a travel site. Discounted tickets, cheap hostels, places I'd always wanted to see. I clicked on one of the destinations I'd once put on a list and then forgotten because there's no point dreaming if you'll never have the money. The price wasn't small, but now, for the first time, I could look at it and think, if I save for a few months, I could actually go. Not after making sure Mom's loan was paid, not after covering Dad's bills, not after checking my sister's rent. Just me. I booked the ticket. When the confirmation email came in, I sat there smiling, not the sharp smile of that motel morning, but a soft, quiet one. I thought of that porch, that ruined cake, that sentence that had cracked my world open. He's only good for paying our bills. They were wrong. I was good at a lot of things. I was good at my job. I was good at listening. I was good at repairing the broken parts of myself. I was good at setting boundaries, even when they shook. Most importantly, I was good at learning, finally, that my value did not come from the numbers in my bank account or the bills I covered for other people. The next time my phone buzzed with a message about money, I knew what I would do. Read it, breathe, archive it. Sometimes losing family is how you save yourself, and sometimes, once you've saved yourself, you realize something even bigger. You never had to be their wallet to be worthy of love. You just had to stop letting them convince you that was all you were.